Okay, now that you're understanding about your canister and how during pregnancy, typically your canister will open, and by doing more concentrated, deep core exercises that are pregnancy safe and keeping your glutes turned on through doing that really challenging lunge exercise, that is all fine and dandy. But what if your natural position for your hips is not neutral? So if it's not neutral, it's either anteriorly tilted or posteriorly tilted. And that means that your canister, just maybe even before pregnancy, was already off. Because an anteriorly, if this is the front of your body, anteriorly tilted pelvis is like this. So even if your ribs are great, your canister's already not ideal. And if you're posteriorly tilted, it looks like this. So we want to, one, feel the range of motion that our hips have. They're not meant to stay in one position. And two, recognize, okay, where do I tend to hold myself? And how through the next section in my favorite movement section, there's a lot of hip mobility movements that help you balance out and find more balance in that pelvic position. But first, it's really important to understand what is an anterior pelvic tilt and a posterior pelvic tilt. So by definition, an anterior pelvic tilt is when, I'm going to demonstrate it on here, your sticky outie bones, so those bones right here on the front of your hips, right here, and your pubic bone, I think everyone knows where their pubic bone is, are in line. So if you were to run into a wall, your pubic bone and your sticky outie bones would hit the wall at the same time. That's a neutral pelvis. An anterior tilt is when the sticky outie bones are ahead of the pubic bone. And a posterior pelvic tilt is when the pubic bone is in front of the sticky outie bones. So stand up right now and feel that on yourself for a moment. When you stand, does it feel like your pubic bone is in front, posterior tilt, your pubic bone is back, anterior tilt? There's some other ways you can kind of assess this on yourself that are pretty apparent, especially if you have a more exaggerated one. So for the anterior pelvic tilt, you're going to have a more exaggerated curve in your spine. So this girl here is standing with a neutral pelvis. So if she had an anterior tilt, she would have a much bigger arch right here. Her pubic bone, like we wouldn't even see this little blue spot here. It would be hidden behind her hand. And her tailbone, her butt would look a lot rounder and more prominent. This is often the result of a weaker core. That's why it's really common during pregnancy. But it's also a sign that your hip flexors are really tight. And it's the more common position of the pelvis when we sit too much. So desk workers, drivers, they tend to have a more anterior tilt to their pelvis, and it relates to that tight hip flexors. Now, a posterior pelvic tilt, she has a little curve in her spine here. This would be flat, completely flat, and she would have no bum. You'd be like, where'd her bum go? Pancake bum, right? Her pubic bone would be more out and prominent. You'd be like, wow, look at her big pubic bone right there. And her tailbone is really tucked between her legs. This is a position you see more often when moms or people are having low back pain. They tend to slouch when they sit. Whoops, I didn't mean to hit that. We went the wrong way. They slouch when they sit, or they tend to grip their butt, and that can be related to tailbone pain or back pain. So it's usually there's something going on in this posterior area of the body that is more uncomfortable, and the tendency is to just kind of tilt away from it. It feels like you're giving your low back more space, and can feel like it might relieve back pain. It ultimately doesn't relieve back pain at all. It causes more more compensations and other things going on there. So I want you to take a moment, pause this video, or wait before progressing to the next video to take a brief assessment of where you think your pelvis is in your body. Do you think it's neutral, feels pretty aligned? Do you feel like you're more anteriorly tilted or posteriorly tilted? Look at your butt, look at your low back. If you're unsure about where your pubic bone and your sticky outy bones are. If you have a prominent big arch in your back, you're probably anterior tilting. If you have a big booty sticks out and a big arch, that's an anterior tilt. If you have no booty and a flat back, that's a posterior tilt. Those are kind of the foolproof ways to, gauge where you're at and have an idea of where you're at without a professional looking at you. Okay. Pelvic position at birth. I would be remiss to not address this at least for a few moments. So, baby comes out down here, right? Baby comes out of this hole, and these bones are your sit bones. They are right there. And the wider this is, the easier it's going to be for baby to come out, right? And the narrower this is, the harder because it has less space. Okay, I want you to all sit on your hands right now. And what you're going to do is you are going to start with your knees straight ahead, and then you're sitting on your hands. I want you to bring your knees out like this woman right here. Her knees are out and her feet are in. Don't worry about what your feet are doing so much. It's more about the knees. Now bring your knees together and you can bring your feet out. Okay? And what do you feel? So if you're unsure, so knees out, feet kind of, maybe heels kind of facing in more. I don't feel my sit bones. They kind of disappeared. Knees together, feet out. Ooh, they're more prominent. I feel them better. Okay, let me feel that movement between my knees being in and as I move my knees out again. Feels kind of like as I bring my knees out that my sit bones are moving together. And when I bring my knees out, it feels like my sit bones are moving out. Well, if that's what you felt, that's because that's what's happening. When you lay in this traditional birthing position with your knees spread apart, your sit bones are narrower. They're closer together, making less available space for baby to come out. When your knees are together, you can still be laying on your back and have your knees together. Your sit bones are wider apart. I'm going to give a brief demonstration of this in the next video.